How I Defeated My Vampire Professor. Hey, it's Rebecca again. So you liked my little dark magic origin story? Well, buckle up, because this one's a doozy. Let me tell you about the time I discovered my microeconomics professor was actually a vampire. And not the sexy, brooding kind. The, I'm going to drain your GPA and possibly your literal blood kind. The first clues. It all started in my night class. Red flag number 1. Am I right? Professor Dravinsky only taught after sunset, which I initially chalked up to him having a day job. Adjunct professors aren't exactly rolling in cash these days. I should have been suspicious when he insisted on conducting office hours exclusively in unlit campus basements, or when he kept referring to the Great Depression as that little economic hiccup I witnessed. Or maybe when he returned my midterm with the comment, "Your understanding of supply and demand curves is almost as disappointing as the flavor of your blood type." But honestly, I was just trying to pass the class and get my business minor. When you're working full-time and taking night classes, you don't have the luxury of questioning why your professor hisses at calculator apps, or why he's never once been seen eating in the faculty lounge. The tipping point. The moment I knew something was truly wrong was during our evening review session before finals. I was the only student who showed up. Another red flag. Apparently everyone else had mysteriously transferred or gone missing. "Rebecca," he said, his accent suddenly much thicker than usual. "You have been quite the persistent student. Most give up by now." I laughed nervously. "Well, I really need this credit to graduate." "What you need," he said, moving unnaturally fast to the classroom door and locking it, "is to understand your place in the food chain." That's when he smiled, revealing those perfect, pointy canines. And not the normal pointy-ish canines some people have. I'm talking full on. I'm about to drink your blood while explaining how inflation works. Fangs. "Professor Dravinsky," I said, slowly reaching into my backpack where I kept my emergency spell components, because after the incident with Derek the Fountain Pen, I never leave home without them. "Are you trying to tell me you're a vampire?" "I prefer the term eternally tenured faculty," he replied, his eyes glowing red. "I've been teaching this same course since 1873. Do you know how many versions of the same stupid questions I've answered about elastic demand? Magic versus vampire economics. Now here's where my dark magic training came in handy. Most people would panic when confronted by a vampire professor with a century of pent-up grading frustration. But I had spent the last 6 months learning forbidden arts, specifically to deal with annoying authority figures. As he lunged across the desk, I quickly drew a chalk sigil on my textbook. Finally, a good use for that overpriced doorstop. And muttered the incantation I'd learned for dealing with difficult customer service calls. It wasn't designed for vampires specifically, but it creates a barrier of pure bureaucratic red tape, something even the undead hate dealing with. "What is this?" he hissed, bouncing off an invisible wall of administrative paperwork. "Release me at once." "Sorry, Professor," I said, gaining confidence. "You'll need to fill out Form VMP 301 in triplicate and wait 3 to 5 business days for processing." While he was distracted trying to breach my bureaucratic barrier, I pulled out the other items from my emergency kit. A vial of garlic oil, which I normally use for pasta, but hey, dual purpose. A tiny mirror for checking if my lipstick is even, and apparently also for confirming vampire status. And a wooden ruler, because you never know when you need to measure something, or stake someone. Professor Dravinsky recovered quickly, though. "You think simple folk remedies will stop me? I have tenure, you foolish mortal." That's when I realized standard vampire fighting techniques wouldn't be enough. I needed to hit him where it truly hurt. The final showdown. "Professor," I said calmly, pulling out my phone. "I've just submitted a comprehensive 1-star review of your class on ratemyprofessor.com, detailing your tendency to literally suck the life out of your students." He flinched visibly. "You wouldn't dare." "I also have an email drafted to the department chair, questioning why all your published research papers stop including photographs around 1901. Stop this at once, he demanded, backing away. And finally, I said, pulling out my most powerful weapon, I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation for the Board of Trustees analyzing the statistical improbability of your unchanged teaching methods over the past century and a half. That's when I saw real fear in his undead eyes. But he wasn't done yet. With supernatural speed, he knocked my phone away and cornered me by the whiteboard. Enough games, he growled. After I drain you dry, I'll simply erase all electronic evidence. No one questions a tenured professor when students occasionally disappear. I was running out of options. My phone was across the room, and with it, most of my magical apps. Yes, there are apps for dark magic now. Technology and the occult have a surprisingly good relationship. But then I remembered my final trick. You see, after the incident with my sourdough starter gaining sentience, I'd gotten in the habit of carrying a small pouch of special flour with me. It was enchanted to respond to my thoughts and take shapes I needed. As Professor Dravinsky moved in for the kill, I threw the flour into the air and whispered, "Form IRS audit." The flour swirled and took the shape of a spectral tax auditor, complete with a ghostly briefcase. "Professor Dravinsky," the flower apparition intoned, "we have reason to believe you have failed to report income across multiple centuries. Please provide documentation for all earnings since 1873. The vampire professor's face contorted in absolute horror. "No, not the IRS. I've been dodging them for generations. Additionally," my flower creation continued, "we'll need explanation for your claim of blood acquisition as a business expense. Victory is mine." While the vampire was distracted by his worst nightmare, tax compliance, I grabbed my wooden ruler, snapped it in half to create a makeshift stake, and approached from behind. "This is for curving the midterm to make it impossible to get an A," I said, and drove the stake home. Professor Dravinsky exploded into a cloud of dust, calculator pieces, and what looked suspiciously like ungraded papers from previous semesters. As the dust settled, I heard a slow clap from the doorway. Somehow, the door had unlocked itself during our battle, and there stood the department chair, Professor Jenkins. "Ms. Rebecca," she said with a wry smile, "I've been trying to find cause to remove Dravinsky for decades. Vampirism isn't technically against faculty code. We have a very strong supernatural anti-discrimination policy, but his teaching evaluations were abysmal." She looked at the pile of dust and added, "I don't suppose you'd be interested in teaching microeconomics next semester. We suddenly have an opening." And that, my friends, is how I went from dark magic practitioner to adjunct professor. The pay is terrible, but I get to design my own curriculum, and none of my students have mysteriously disappeared yet. Plus, I finally got to put Vanquisher of the Undead on my LinkedIn profile. Just between us, though, I'm keeping an eye on Professor Jenkins from biology. No one should be that excited about blood types.